Hello everyone, and welcome to Diplomatic Briefing. On the eve of the China-EU summit, China's Ministry of Commerce announced that, as agreed by both China and the US, Vice Premier He Lifeng will visit Sweden from July 27th to 30th to hold economic and trade talks with the US side. Both China and the US will act in accordance with the consensus during the phone call between the two heads of state on June 5th, utilizing the China-US Economic and Trade Consultation Mechanism. Guided by mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and win-win cooperation, continue consultations on economic and trade issues. U.S. Treasury Secretary Bessent stated that next week, Chinese and U.S. economic and trade officials will hold the third round of trade consultations in Stockholm, Sweden. The talks may touch on a broader range of topics, including the issue of China purchasing oil from Russia and Iran. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Guo Jiejun stated that China's position on economic and trade issues is consistent and clear. He hoped the U.S. would work with China to implement the consensus from the two heads of state's phone call, utilize the China-U.S. Economic and Trade Consultation Mechanism, and, based on equality, mutual respect, and reciprocity, enhance consensus, reduce misunderstandings, strengthen cooperation, and promote stable, healthy, sustainable China-U.S. relations through dialogue. No news has been released regarding EU-US tariff negotiations. Meanwhile, Japan and the United States have reached a consensus. The EU could have better utilized the China-EU summit platform to negotiate more favorable terms with the US. However, the EU overestimates itself. It wants the US to reduce or exempt tariffs, yet is unwilling to genuinely cooperate with China and continues to play little tricks. China has no choice but to firmly defend its own interests. The China-EU summit kicked off on the 24th. Minister of Commerce Wang Wentao held a video conference with Valdis Dombrovskis, the EU Commissioner for Trade, where they had a frank and in-depth discussion on China-EU economic and trade cooperation as well as key issues. China also lodged a stern protest regarding the EU's inclusion of two Chinese financial institutions in the list for its 18th round of sanctions against Russia. Regarding the EU's sanctions on Chinese companies, a Ministry of Commerce spokesperson stated that the EU, in its 18th round of sanctions against Russia, included certain Chinese enterprises and sanctioned two Chinese financial institutions under unfounded accusations. China is strongly dissatisfied and firmly opposes this. The spokesperson added that the EU's actions violate the consensus reached by Chinese and European leaders, causing serious negative impacts on China-EU economic, trade, and financial cooperation. China urges the EU to immediately stop its wrongful practice of listing Chinese enterprises and financial institutions. China will take necessary measures to resolutely safeguard the legitimate rights and interests of Chinese enterprises and financial institutions. Looking at the schedule, the China-EU summit will take place first on July 24th, followed by a new round of China-US economic and trade negotiations from July 27th to 30th. Then, on August 1st, Trump has set a final negotiation deadline for the EU and other economies. It is foreseeable that the coming week will be a critical moment for major economies to bargain with each other in this round of interactions. In the negotiations with the United States, China holds the initiative, and the key still lies in having strong cards to play in the contest of strength. With the rapid development of artificial intelligence (AI) technology, the demand for electricity from AI data centers is increasing day by day, leading to power supply shortages in the United States. This has caused anxiety for the Trump administration and American businesses. According to CCTV News, several officials in the Trump administration have recently expressed a strong sense of crisis regarding China-US technological competition, especially in the field of AI. On July 15th, during his attendance at the Energy and Innovation Summit in Pennsylvania, U.S. President Trump revealed that multiple American AI and energy companies have announced investment projects totaling $92 billion, which will be used to develop energy and technology. Some American tech companies are sounding the alarm, saying that the U.S. is falling behind China in energy production, and that inadequate energy infrastructure could slow down the development of AI in the United States. Anthropic is a startup based in San Francisco, USA, which has developed the Claude large language model and is one of the leading companies in the AI field. On July 22nd, the company released a report pointing out that, according to data published this February by the Australian think tank Climate Energy Finance, China increased its power capacity by about 400 gigawatts last year, while the US only added several dozen gigawatts, roughly one-tenth of China's increase. Anthropic says that by 2028, the US AI industry will need at least 50 gigawatts of power capacity, but the gap between the US and China in energy infrastructure is cause for concern. The United States will not be able to meet the energy demands for AI training or inference by 2028. Anthropic believes that regulatory hurdles are part of the reason for the slow pace of energy infrastructure development in the US. For example, transmission lines and interconnection facilities have long been unable to obtain construction permits and approvals. The report adds that, by contrast, China is much more efficient in handling these issues. China is also competing for AI leadership, but it does not face the same problems as the United States. Maddie Zhao, co-head of China equity research at BofA Securities, stated last month that while U.S. capital expenditure in the AI sector is mainly focused on hardware such as semiconductors, China is investing heavily in building data centers and the necessary energy infrastructure. In recent years, the construction of energy infrastructure in the United States has been extremely slow, which has already raised concerns among many AI giants. In February, Colleen, global head of energy market development and innovation at Google, stated that amid the increasingly fierce AI race, the United States is experiencing a power capacity crisis. And in May, American billionaire and ex-AI boss Elon Musk also warned that by mid-2026, the United States could face power supply issues related to AI development. The regulatory authority of U.S. grid operator PJM also recently issued a warning, saying that the surge in electricity demand driven by AI technology has already exhausted grid capacity in the areas with the highest data center density across the United States. PJM is the largest grid operator in the U.S., and their grid covers most areas in 13 states. Joe Boring, president of the Independent Regulatory Agency, said there is simply no new capacity to meet the new load. The solution is to make sure that those who want to build data centers are serious enough and willing to provide their own power generation facilities. On July 15, U.S. President Trump attended a technology industry conference held in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Republican Senator McCormick, who hosted the meeting, announced a $90 billion investment in the state to develop energy and technology, with part of the investment going toward data center and energy infrastructure construction. Trump has already made the U.S.-China AI race a top priority and has taken a series of measures to support the AI industry. Earlier reports revealed that the Trump administration is preparing a package of executive orders aimed at promoting the expansion of America's AI industry by making it easier for power projects to connect to the grid and providing land for data centers, among other measures. The development of AI technology and the increase in data centers have caused U.S. electricity demand, which had been stagnant for nearly 2 decades, to surge this year. However, the surge in electricity demand has also sparked public concerns in the U.S. about potential power shortages. People worry that this could lead to higher electricity bills, an increased risk of blackouts, and could also slow down the progress of major tech companies in the AI race. Although Trump has repeatedly touted so-called friendly competition, the United States has already taken a series of measures, including tightening chip export controls and cracking down on Chinese tech companies, in an attempt to hinder the development of AI technology in China. Regarding such actions by the United States, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian has previously stated that the U.S. is overstretching the concept of national security, abusing export controls and long-arm jurisdiction, and maliciously blocking and suppressing Chinese chip products and the artificial intelligence industry without justification. This seriously violates market rules, severely disrupts the stability of global industrial and supply chains, and gravely harms the legitimate rights and interests of Chinese enterprises. China will absolutely not accept this. Lin Jian stated that China will take resolute measures to safeguard its own development rights and the legitimate interests of Chinese enterprises. Let me summarize a few observations. First, AI is the latest key track leading technological progress. From current developments, China and the US are both top competitors, each with advantages. the outside world particularly focuses on chip and large language model competition. Industry-specific models and electricity are also areas that cannot be overlooked. Obviously, China has significant advantages in these two areas, especially in electricity. On one hand, data centers require electricity for computing, and in fact, the rare earths needed in high-end manufacturing are also part of an energy-intensive industry during their extraction and refining processes. China has already implemented measures to address this and has also begun planning for the next generation of electricity demand. Now, not only does the US need new electricity for AI computing, but because they're worried about China dominating rare earths, they want to develop their own rare earth industry. So how will they solve the electricity problem? I believe that even if they want to build power plants, the machinery and tools would have to be bought from China, so it's actually very difficult for the US to decouple from China. Secondly, both China and the US have their own leading positions in the AI field, while the EU has already been left behind from the first tier. They don't have their own large language models, lack rare earth processing technology, and don't possess the core technologies for chip manufacturing. Not to mention the electricity needed for data centers and computing. Aside from gaming resources, they refuse to buy affordable energy from Russia, so they don't even have enough for daily use, let alone developing AI. In short, Europe has already fallen far behind in this new round of technological competition. No wonder the Trump team looks down on the EU. Third, when facing an even worse situation, the EU still tries to act tough with both China and the US, and wants